Hey everybody, welcome to the Sim Hangar. My name's Mark. Thank you very much for watching. And as you can see, I'm in the DOF Reality H3 motion simulator. And if you haven't seen my initial video, please check it out. This is a direct follow-on to that video, and I'm really starting this video at the end of the process because I've now got motion compensation enabled. It's set up, ready to go. Firstly, a quick word from this video's sponsor. The most expensive component in your VR headset are your lenses. Protect your lenses and your eyes with lens inserts. VRWave can make lenses to your prescription, or maybe you don't wear glasses but want to protect your lenses. Then look to get blue light and anti-glare filter. This will reduce stress on your eyes, reduce the chance of motion sickness, means you can stay longer in VR. VRWave produce lenses for most VR headsets, link in the notes below. Before we go any further, let me just demonstrate to you and explain to you exactly what motion compensation is and why I think it's an absolute essential element if you're going to be flying in a motion simulator. And in a nutshell, the motion simulator moves and the positional tracking in your VR headset moves with it. However, the amount of movement recorded changes your head position within the cockpit, and there's a mismatch between the movement of the motion simulator or motion platform and the amount of movement that would be realistic if you actually sat in the cockpit, because obviously the gravitational forces, centrifugal forces, are holding you in a set position. The first thing you should do is just make sure motion compensation is available, and you can do that by activating motion compensation.
Motion compensation activated.
It's activated, and the next step to take is to make sure that you redefine the center. You can hard code that into the settings if you want to, but it's a whole lot quicker and easy to set up your head position, or what they call center of rotation. So again, another shortcut key.
Tracker calibrated.
Tracker is calibrated, and I can enable that tracker
Overlay activated
by looking down. And I can see there the blue is, or cyan, is directly up, red is pointing to the right, and yellow is pointing forward. Slightly off. Maybe my head position was slightly off. So I can, of course,
tracker calibrated.
Calibrate again, have a look down. I hope you can see that tracker. I'm not sure if it's going to come out, but yep, that looks absolutely spot on. Perfect.
Overlay off. Motion compensation off.
So I'm now turning motion compensation off. Let's get up in the air and I can demonstrate the mismatch of the headset movement, or the VR headset movement, in relation to the cockpit. Throttle forward, let's get going. I gotta say to you guys, I absolutely love being in this H3. It is an amazing, absolutely amazing experience. If you're an enthusiast and you can afford it, this is something you should consider. Gear going up. Flaps going up. Whoop. Love that thump as the gear comes up. Okay. So, a nice gentle takeoff, and we're just flying gently. We can do a gentle roll. You can see that my head is moving slightly, but if we do it more dramatically, remember motion compensation is off, you'll get more of a feeling of what I'm talking about. So, let's bank to the left. Can you see how my head is moving unrealistically? I'm now banking to the right. Right over. My head's almost outside the cockpit. If I push down, go into a steep dive, see how my head goes way forward. It's pushing it forward because the motion simulator has moved and pushed me forward. the headset's picking that up and tracking. Again, look how far back I go if I go into a steep climb. So that's with motion compensation off. So let's now enable motion compensation. Here we go. Just get myself more or less straight and level again.
Motion compensation activated.
Motion compensation activated. So let's try and do the same thing and see if we can identify the difference. Okay, first of all, let's do a fairly steep bank to the left. Notice how my head's staying absolutely still. To the right. Pulling into a steep climb. Head's remained more or less where I'd expect it to be in the real world. And going into a dive. Whoop! I think I passed out there. A little bit too many G's. So let's try that again, but you can see I'm not being pushed forward like I was before. Absolutely working perfectly. And that completes my H3 setup by and large. Absolutely wonderful. And it was realistic before, but now you don't get that feeling like you're falling out of a cockpit or anything. You feel planted in the seat. It's absolutely an amazing experience. And if you're using a motion simulator or you're thinking about getting a motion simulator, well, you should think about getting the DOF, one of the DOF H2, H3, P3, P6, and so on. It's an amazing experience. But to complete that experience, I feel motion compensation is absolutely essential. And I've been using, there's various methods available, but the one I've been using is to use the width motion sensor. It's the simplest, it's the easiest. Now I know quite a lot of people have struggled with motion compensation to get it functional. It takes a little while to get your head round, but once you do that, it's absolutely no problem at all. And hopefully this video will help you implement motion compensation. The one thing I did want to mention is I am using it with the Pico 4, my favorite VR headset, for £500 in the UK. It's such a bargain. You just put it on and away you go. I am using Steam VR, but I'm using Steam VR is the OpenXR runtime. And again, we'll get more into that in the details. So I hope that that's clearly demonstrated what motion compensation is and what a wonderful experience it gives you in the headset. Absolutely rounds out the experience. So let's now jump into how did we get here and how did we get it working. The one key I would like to mention, I've mentioned it already, but I think it's critically important. Once you've got everything set up, activate motion compensation. Then the very next step is get your center of rotation, or COR, or core as they call it, set that, and then you're away. You need to reset that center of rotation. It's just a key press and you're done. Okay, see you on the desktop. The method that I selected to install motion compensation carries with it a number of prerequisites. It's using SimRacing Studio's excellent software, and in addition, on top of the base license, a premium add-on subscription costing $20 annually is required. In addition, you'll be required to download and install the OpenXR Motion Compensation software, which is freeware, and in addition, the purchase of the width motion sensor and associated RS-232 cable. My focus is obviously on Microsoft Flight Simulator, but in general terms will apply across the board providing the game or application is OpenXR compatible. WitMotion provide a variety of different sensors. Make sure you purchase the right one as indicated above. I purchased mine through Amazon, and I also purchased the RS232 to USB cable. I purchased mine separately, but sometimes they're sold together as a set. The sensor can be installed on your rig either vertically or horizontally. I've chosen horizontally, and it does not require line of sight. It needs to be fastened very securely to your rig so that it doesn't move and shake around. I use just 2 cable ties or zip ties to hold it fast, and I seated it on a small rubber cushion to act as a small dampener. Whilst not a prerequisite, I recommend that you install it with the connector where the RS232 cable connects to the WitMotion sensor points towards the front of your rig. The advantage of this is you won't have to reverse any axes when calibrating and setting up. I then ran the cable along the frame to the back of the unit where I plugged it into a powered USB 3 hub. Once the sensor is connected, you can go to your device manager, and under the ports COM and LPT, you should see the device USB serial CH340. That's the WitMotion sensor. Now that our sensor is successfully installed, open up the SimRacing Studio software. Let's head over to the Setup tab, and from the menu option on the left-hand side, we're going to choose Motion Compensation. At the top are 2 sets of instructions, one for OpenXR and one for SteamVR, which in reality is OpenVR, the forerunner to OpenXR. If we click on either one of these links, we're provided with a full and comprehensive set of instructions. But in summary, we're not interested really in OpenVR. We want the more modern implementation, OpenXR. Even though in my case, I'll be running SteamVR. I'll be running SteamVR as my OpenXR runtime. It's easy here to get confused. I would like to point out at this point that this guide for implementing motion compensation is just that, a guide. These instructions provide far more detail and problem solving than it's possible for me to do in this video. It's strongly recommended you follow these instructions. Our next step is to download and install the OpenXR Motion Compensation software. We do this by selecting the link in the notes, and here we're looking to download the install and the user guide. Once again, the user guide provides helpful tips, additional information, and problem-solving information. Download both and place in a suitable location on your hard drive. A point worth noting is this software is provided free of charge and by BuzzTBear. Thank you very much, sir. You're an invaluable contributor to the community. If you run into problems, I'd strongly recommend that you join BuzzTBear's Discord channel. Links in the user guide. He is incredibly helpful and always willing to help. Once again, BuzzTBear, thank you very much. Once you've downloaded the software, go ahead and install it. Select Run as Administrator. You'll get the standard Windows warning. Select Run Anyway, and the install will start. Accept the license agreement, and it is strongly recommended that you allow this software to install to the default location, because this is where SRS will be looking for it. Install only takes a few seconds. As mentioned before, it comes with a fairly comprehensive user guide, perfect for reference if you need it. We're done. Back to SimRacing Studio software. You will see on the right-hand side menu that motion compensation has now turned green and has a tick. The motion sensor will automatically select a COM port. The OpenXR software is now installed. Back to Setup and our Motion Compensation tab. There we can see OpenXR Motion Compensation is installed. If it's not showing, hit the refresh. Time now for us to do some configuration. Making sure that your motion simulator is in the straight and level position, select the 2 bullseyes. which will recalibrate the pitch and roll. Once you've done that, you may see the numbers vary slightly. That's normal. Under the settings, make sure the installation, horizontal or vertical, matches your installation. In my case, horizontal. We shouldn't need to swap the roll and pitch axis, as mentioned previously, but you can always come back here and do that later if you need to. What we do need to do is change the seated height. By default, it's showing 1000. Change that to 1. That's all we need to do here now. Page back up and click on the Config button, and you're all configured and ready to go. Well, almost. You can adjust some of the motion compensation parameters whilst you fly. You'll notice under the sensor section, there's a factor bar, slider bar for both sway and surge. If, like me, you only have 2 or 3 degrees of motion or freedom, these factor bars now affect pitch and roll. I found leaving them on 100 worked best for me, but if you pull the slider back and reduce it from 100 down to 80 or 70, it changes and varies the aggressiveness of the motion compensation. So, for example, you like a little bit of head sway, then you can adjust accordingly. You'll also note the small keyboard in the upper right-hand corner of the menus. Within the Sim Racing Studio software, this will allow you to activate and deactivate motion compensation, but I recommend that you leave that well alone, as these functions can be carried out in the motion compensation software itself. And for the DOF H2 or H3, we do need to make a change to the motion compensation INI file. Before we're done, let's have a look at that. But before we do so, one very important point: whenever you make any changes to the Sim Racing Studio software, make sure you save those changes. Just click on the Save button in the top right hand corner. If you don't save, your changes will be lost. Navigate to the OpenXR Motion Compensation.ini file. You'll find it under your C drive. Normally uses your username app data local OpenXR Motion Compensation, and in that directory you'll find the OpenXR Motion Compensation.ini file. Open that with Notebook. I recommend you make a copy before making any changes. And here we're looking to make one change to an entry, which I've already done. That is the offset down. By default it will read 0.0, change it to 100.0. This will make calculating your center of rotation a whole lot easier. Leave all the other settings and values unchanged, with the exception of some shortcut keys which we'll now have a look at. And these I recommend that you change, particularly if using Microsoft Flight Simulator. You'll find the shortcut keys towards the bottom of the INI file. And there are 3 that we want to change, or I recommend you change, as they conflict with the camera views in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Activate and deactivate motion compensation, making it active. By default is Control plus Insert. I've changed it just to the / key. Set the reference pose for the tracker, the center. Default is Control plus Delete. I've simply selected the period or full stop key. And third and finally, there's the toggle overlay, which is Control plus D by default. I've changed that to the comma. You of course can leave them as default or change them to suit yourself to avoid conflicts in Sim. Once you're happy with the changes, save and you're done. You should now be ready to fly. Depending what VR headset you use will depend on the OpenXR runtime. As I mentioned, mine is Steam, and you can see here the tracker is shown, so I know it's active. From the menu bar, if I select Settings and then go down to Startup and Shutdown, I can check and manage the add-ons, and there I can see the Sim Racing Studio app is active. I'm ready to go fly. Activate motion compensation. Once I'm in Sim and on the runway, set my center, and I'm away. It's as simple as that. I've used this setup with my HP Reverb, Windows Mixed Reality, and the Pimax with Pimax XR via Pimax Play. It works too. If you do run into problems, once again, check out the various forums, Busty Bear's Discord. There's a wealth of help to get you up and away. I'm sure I've probably forgotten something. Apologies in advance if that's the case. Thank you very much for joining me today. Stay well, look after yourselves. I'll see you all again very soon, and bye for now.